September 15th, 1940, 11:32 a.m., 20,000 feet above southern England. The cockpit is vibrating so hard your teeth chatter inside your skull. The Merlin engine howls, a living thing, straining at full power as a Spitfire claws upward through broken cloud. The air is thin, brutally cold, frosting the edges of the canopy. Your oxygen mask smells of rubber and sweat. Somewhere ahead, just beyond the glare of the sun, German bombers are coming. You can't see them yet, but you can feel them. The radio crackles with half-heard commands, clipped British voices fighting static and urgency. Below, the English countryside looks peaceful, green fields, hedgerows, villages frozen in time. It won't stay that way for long. Then someone shouts, "Bandits! 12 o'clock! Hi!" Dark specks appear in the distance. Then more, dozens, Heinkel bombers, Messerschmitt escorts, the Luftwaffe in force. This is not a drill. This is not another interception. This is a day everything changes. And thousands of miles away, across the Atlantic, American observers, men who have laughed, scoffed, and rolled their eyes at this airplane, are about to be proven catastrophically wrong. Because today, the British Spitfire is about to do something no one expects. Not the Germans, not the Americans, not even the men flying it. For months, American military attaches stationed in Britain have been skeptical, sometimes openly dismissive, of the supermarine Spitfire. To them, it looked delicate, lightly built, too refined, a thoroughbred racehorse compared to what they believed a fighter should be. American doctrine favored ruggedness, heavy firepower, straight lines, planes that could take punishment and keep flying. The Spitfire, with its elliptical wings and tight tolerances, struck many Americans as fragile. One U.S. Army Air Corps officer reportedly joked that it looked too pretty to survive a real war. Another dismissed it as a gentleman's airplane. They preferred brute force. The upcoming American fighters, the P-40 Warhawk, the P-39 Airacobra, were heavier, thicker, armed like flying sledgehammers. Speed and elegance were nice, but Americans believed wars were won with durability and firepower. The Spitfire, they thought, would fold. They were wrong, painfully wrong. Back in the cockpit, Flight Lieutenant Brian Kingcome grips the control stick as his squadron banks left, sunlight flashing off wings like blades. His Spitfire feels alive beneath him, responsive, eager, almost impatient. This airplane doesn't just fly. It answers. He pushes the nose down slightly, building speed. The German bombers are clearer now, long, angular shapes droning forward in tight formation, confident, methodical. They believe the RAF is nearly finished, that Britain is hanging by a thread. They believe this because they've been told it's true. They've been told British pilots are exhausted, that their aircraft are inferior, that victory is inevitable. They've been told wrong. Red section, attack. Kingcome shoves the throttle forward. The Merlin roars. The Spitfire surges like it's been released from a leash. G-forces press him into the seat as the aircraft rolls effortlessly onto its side and dives. Trace of fire streaks upward, thin glowing lines cutting through sky and cloud. The first German bomber grows rapidly in his gun sight. Steady. Closer. Closer. He squeezes the trigger. 8.303 Browning machine guns erupt at once. The vibration is violent, metallic, deafening. Streams of bullets converge into the bomber's wing root. Metal peels away. Smoke erupts. The aircraft lurches, then begins to fall out of formation. No time to watch it die. Kingcome pulls up, rolls, and is already looking for the next target. Around him, the sky explodes into chaos. Spitfires twist and turn with impossible grace. Climbing and diving in tight arcs, the heavier German aircraft struggle to follow. Messerschmitt Bf-109s try to pounce from above, but the Spitfire can turn inside them. Again and again, over and over. The air is filled with sound, engines screaming, guns hammering, radios shouting warnings that come too late. A German fighter flashes past so close Kingcome sees the pilot's goggles. Then it's gone. Then another bomber fills the sky. And another. On the ground, IAF sector controllers watch plots slide across massive tables. Red markers, blue markers, lines converging. This is not a single engagement. It's dozens happening at once, spread across southern England. The Luftwaffe has committed everything. So has the RAF. And the Spitfire, mocked, doubted, underestimated, is everywhere. By midday, reports start coming in. Then more. Then too many to ignore. German bombers destroyed. Fighters shot down. Entire formations broken apart. One squadron reports 5 kills in minutes. Another reports 8. Then 12. Then the number that makes even hardened officers pause. 17 German aircraft destroyed in a single day by Spitfire units. 17. Not damaged. Not driven off. Destroyed. Crashed into fields. Exploded in midair. Pilots killed or captured. The Luftwaffe is bleeding. And watching from the sidelines, American observers stop smiling. Stop joking. Stop dismissing the A-plane they are seeing rewrite the rules of air combat in real time. Because the Spitfire hasn't just survived. It has dominated. And this single day in the skies over Britain is about to force a total reevaluation of everything the Americans thought they knew about modern air warfare. The reports keep coming in, one after another, stacking up on desks and clipping boards across southern England. Confirmed kills. Probable kills. German formations shattered before they ever reached their targets. At IAF Bentley Priory, Air Chief Marshal Hugh Dowding stands over the operations table, hands clasped behind his back, eyes fixed on the shifting markers. He says very little. He doesn't need to. The numbers speak for themselves. But it's not just British officers watching. Standing quietly along the edge of the room are men in foreign uniforms, U.S. Army Air Corps observers sent to Britain to study the war firsthand. Officially, America is still neutral. Unofficially, these men are here to learn what the next war will look like, and what they are seeing today doesn't match their assumptions. Only weeks earlier, some of them had toured IAF airfields, examining Spitfires up close. They tapped the thin aluminum skin with their knuckles, noted the light armament, 8 rifle-caliber machine guns instead of heavy cannons, a narrow landing gear that looked dangerously unstable. One American major reportedly shook his head and muttered, "That thing wouldn't last 5 minutes against modern fighters." Now, 5 minutes has turned into hours, and the Spitfires are still up there. By early afternoon, the scale of the Luftwaffe's losses is undeniable. German radio traffic, intercepted, decoded, has shifted in tone. Confident commands have given way to confusion, urgent calls for regrouping, requests for fighter cover that never arrives. In one intercepted transmission, a German bomber pilot shouts that British fighters are everywhere. He isn't exaggerating. The Spitfire's greatest strength isn't raw speed or firepower. It's balance, harmony. Every control surface responds instantly. Every movement feels natural. In a turning fight, a swirling, violent ballet at 20,000 feet, it excels. And today, it's being flown by men who know their sky. British pilots fight over home territory. They can land, refuel, and return to the fight in minutes. German pilots who bail out become prisoners. British pilots who bail out may be back in the air by sunset. Attrition favors Britain, and the Spitfire turns that advantage into a weapon. Flight Lieutenant Kingcome is on his 3rd sortie of the day. His arms ache. His throat is raw from oxygen and shouting. Sweat freezes against his spine at altitude, then soaks him again during descent. The smell of cordite clings to his gloves. He spots another bomber stream pushing inland, escorted by Messerschmitts flying high cover. The Germans are adapting, but not fast enough. Kingcome climbs hard, pushing the Spitfire beyond what American engineers would later call safe limits. The aircraft shudders but holds. The Merlin engine doesn't falter. At the top of the climb, he rolls inverted and dives straight into the escort. This is where the Spitfire shines. It accelerates rapidly, compressibility barely an issue at these speeds. Kingcome fires a short burst into a Messerschmitt crossing his path. Pieces tear off the wing. The German fighter snaps into a spin and disappears into cloud. Another kill. Below him, bombers begin jettisoning payloads early, bombs tumbling harmlessly into open countryside as crews try desperately to escape. This isn't how the Luftwaffe planned it. This isn't how it was supposed to go. Back at an airfield in southern England, an American captain watches Spitfires land one after another. Some return riddled with holes, others trailing smoke. Ground crews swarm instantly, refueling, rearming, patching fabric and metal with practice efficiency. The planes look battered, but they're alive. The captain notices something else. Despite the damage, despite the exhaustion, the pilots climb out grinning, laughing, slapping each other on the back. These men trust their aircraft. That trust, Americans are beginning to realize, is not an accident. The Spitfire's design philosophy is fundamentally different from American thinking. It doesn't try to overpower the enemy. It outmaneuvers him. It turns tighter, climbs faster, bleeds less energy in a fight. In the skies over Britain, agility isn't a luxury. It's survival. And today, agility is winning. That evening, American observers file their preliminary reports. The tone has changed. Words like fragile and lightweight disappear, replaced by phrases like exceptional maneuverability, superior climb rate, remarkable combat effectiveness. One report notes that German pilots appear visibly reluctant to engage Spitfires in turning combat. Another states bluntly, the British fighter is superior to current Luftwaffe types in most combat regimes. It's not praise, it's admission, and it hits hard. Because if the Spitfire can do this, if it can dominate the Luftwaffe at the height of German power, then American assumptions about air combat are dangerously outdated. Heavy isn't always better. More guns don't guarantee victory. Survivability comes from not being hit at all. This realization doesn't just affect opinions. It begins to influence designs. Quietly, subtly, but permanently. As night falls, fires burn in the distance where German aircraft have crashed. Searchlights sweep the sky, searching for raiders that never come. In Berlin, Luftwaffe commanders review loss reports with disbelief. This was supposed to be the knockout blow, the day Britain broke. Instead, it's a warning. The Spitfire is not a stopgap. It's not an interim solution. It is a weapon, fully mature, deadly, and perfectly suited to modern air war. And the Americans now understand something critical. If they are going to fight this war, when they are going to fight this war, they cannot ignore what they've witnessed. Because the Spitfire hasn't just defended Britain. It has exposed the future. And that future is fast, agile, and unforgiving. The shift doesn't happen all at once. There's no announcement, no formal admission. No American officer stands up and says, "We were wrong." But in the days after September 15th, 1940, something fundamental changes. At IAF airfields across southern England, U.S. Army Air Corps observers stop standing back with folded arms. They start asking questions, detailed ones, about wing loading, about turn radius, about how the Spitfire holds energy in a climb. They ask pilots how it feels, and the answers are always the same. It goes where you think. It forgives mistakes. It turns like nothing else. That last one gets written down. In London, American attachés file longer reports now, carefully worded, precise, impossible to ignore. They note that German fighter tactics are shifting away from prolonged engagements with Spitfires, that Luftwaffe pilots are breaking contact sooner, that bomber formations are tighter, more defensive. The Luftwaffe is adapting. That alone tells a story, because German pilots don't adapt unless they have to. One American colonel writes privately that the Spitfire has achieved psychological dominance over the battlefield, forcing the enemy to react rather than dictate terms. That phrase circulates. Psychological dominance. It's not something American doctrine has emphasized. Not yet. Back in Germany, the change is even clearer. After September 1940, Luftwaffe loss rates spike whenever Spitfires are involved. Messerschmitt pilots still respect the Bf 109 speed and climb, but they now know that if a Spitfire gets on their tail, escape is not guaranteed. The Spitfire turns tighter. It bleeds less speed. And in the hands of experienced IAF pilots, it is merciless. German aces begin instructing newcomers, do not turn with them. That single sentence, passed quietly from pilot to pilot, is one of the highest compliments an enemy aircraft can receive. For the men flying the Spitfire, the confidence is intoxicating, but it comes at a cost. September 1940 is relentless. Sortie after sortie, little sleep, constant adrenaline. Pilots land, refuel, rearm, and launch again, sometimes 3 or 4 times a day. Some don't come back. The Spitfire is brilliant, but it isn't invincible. A single well-placed burst can still kill. A moment's inattention can still mean death. And yet, despite the losses, the balance is holding. Britain is holding. Across the Atlantic, American aircraft designers begin to feel the pressure. At Curtiss, engineers working on the P-40 study British combat reports closely. The P-40 is fast in a dive and rugged, but it can't turn like a Spitfire. That fact becomes impossible to ignore. At Bell Aircraft, questions are raised about the P-39 Aerocobra's lack of a high-altitude supercharger. Europe, the Spitfire proves, is fought high, very high, and quietly, almost reluctantly, American designers begin to incorporate lessons learned from an A-plane they once mocked. Thinner wings, better high-altitude performance, greater emphasis on maneuverability, not because it's elegant, but because it works. Meanwhile, the Spitfire keeps evolving. New variants appear with more powerful engines, improved propellers, better armor. Eventually, cannons replace some of the rifle-caliber guns, answering one of the Americans' original criticisms. The aircraft grows more lethal without losing what made it special. It remains responsive, alive, a machine that rewards skill and punishes hesitation. By the end of 1940, the outcome is undeniable. Britain has not fallen. The Luftwaffe has not gained air superiority. And at the center of that failure, over and over again, is the Spitfire, the airplane the Americans laughed at, the airplane they now study. But the story doesn't end there, because within a year, the United States will lend to the war. And when American pilots finally meet the Luftwaffe in large numbers, they will bring with them fighters shaped, directly or indirectly, by what they learned watching the Spitfire fight for Britain's survival. And soon, American pilot will face a question of their own. What happens when you meet the enemy on his terms? December 7th, 1941. Morning. Half a world away from the green fields of England, the war comes crashing into America's life with brutal clarity. Pearl Harbor burns. Battleships sink. Smoke climbs into a blue Hawaiian sky. There is no more neutrality. And suddenly, every lesson learned in Britain matters. By early 1942, American pilots are flying combat missions over Europe and the Pacific. They arrive confident, well-trained, flyer machines built to American philosophy, fast in a dive, heavily armed, solidly constructed. But the sky has changed since 1940. German pilots are veterans now, hardened, tactical, deadly, and early encounters are sobering. American P-40s, brave and capable in the right conditions, struggle at altitude. They dive well, but if the fight turns vertical or devolves into tight turns, they bleed energy quickly. Against experienced Messerschmitt pilots, mistakes are fatal. Reports echo across squadrons. Don't turn. Use speed. Break away. Sound familiar? It's the same warning the Germans learned about the Spitfire. In England, American units operating under the 8-Day Force begin flying alongside IAF squadrons. They watch British pilots climb aggressively, commit early, and trust their machines in ways Americans are being trained to avoid. At first, there's friction. Different radios, different procedures, different instincts. But combat is a ruthless teacher, and it doesn't care about doctrine. Then the P-51 Mustang arrives. At first, it's just another airplane. An escort fighter with promise but limitations. But when paired with the Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, the same lineage that powered the Spitfire, everything changes. The Mustang climbs higher, flies farther, turns better. American pilots feel it immediately. This aircraft doesn't fight against the air. It works with it. The influence is undeniable. The Spitfire's DNA, its philosophy of balance, agility, and energy, is now embedded in the fighter that will help carry the war deep into Germany. Veteran American pilots begin to say things once unthinkable. This thing flies like a Spitfire. It's meant as praise. By 1943 and 1944, the skies over Europe belong increasingly to the Allies. Long-range escorts sweep ahead of bomber streams. German fighters rise to meet them and are beaten back. The Luftwaffe, once feared, is now stretched thin. Short of fuel, short of pilots, short of time, and the Spitfire is still there. New marks, new roles, intercepting V-1 flying bombs, escorting bombers, dominating low and high altitude alike. It never stops adapting. Looking back, American officers quietly revise their early assessments. In private correspondence, some admit their initial judgments were shaped by peacetime thinking, by assumptions that didn't survive contact with war. The Spitfire didn't win by being tough. It won by being right. Right for its moment. Right for its battlefield. Right for the men who flew it. And then there's that day. September 15th, 1940. The day the jokes ended. 17 German aircraft destroyed. A nation still standing. An airplane reborn, not in myth, but in fact. The Americans didn't just witness a victory. They witnessed a revelation. And once you see the future clearly, you can't unsee it.